Welcome back to Engineering Economic course. We continue our discussion on Chapter 2 on cost concepts and design economics. And in today's lecture, we will talk about the present economic studies and we will see several examples of present economic studies. So let's get started. When making an analysis on economical items, which includes money, which includes cost or profit, we need to be careful about one aspect of money. There is an influence of time on the money. So we will name this as the time value of money, and it is one of the important things that we will learn in this course. Okay, so there is an influence of time on money. But the thing is, if we are considering alternatives, if we are doing an analysis for which the comparison time horizon, the time horizon that we do the analysis is less than 1 year, then we can ignore the influence of the time on the money. So when we ignore it, we simply take the amount of cost or profit as it is, without any change, without any adjustment. And these kind of economic analysis are called or referred as the present economy studies. Later on in the following chapters, we will talk about the time value of money. Simply, the money that you have now is more valuable than the same amount of money that you will have 1 year or later. This is called the time value of money. Okay, and if the time span is less than 1 year, we ignore this fact. Okay, then you may ask why, for example, you have 1 real now and 1 real 1 year later. Why is it? It is the same amount, it's 1 real. Okay, why we are saying that it is more valuable now than having it later? Because there are 2 reasons. One reason is this. By using this 1 real now, by having this 1 real now, you can place it in a bank account and you can earn interest. So at the end of 1 year or 2 years, how long this money stays in the bank account, depending on that, you will have an interest earning. So it means that 1 year that you have now will be 1 real that you have now will be 1 real plus any interest earnings in the following years. But if you assume that you have 1 real after a year or 2 years, then you are ignoring this interest earning. So it means that 1 real after these years is not the same with the 1 real having now. Also, there is another issue. With 1 real that you have now, you can buy certain goods and services. But because of inflation, the costs of items increase from 1 year to another. So it means that with 1 real, if you can buy 1 liter of milk now, after, for example, 2 years, you will not be able to buy 1 liter of milk. Maybe you will buy only half a liter of milk. So the power of the money will be less. So it means because of these 2 reasons, opportunity to earn an interest or the power of the money for buying goods and services, since it is reduced or declined, we say that this money has a time value and the current amount is more valuable than a later year. And when we ignore this time value of money, it is called the present economy studies. But in later chapters, we will start learning this and we will consider the time value of the money as well. So in engineering economics, we will compare different alternatives, different project alternatives which has financial items with each other. And we will call these as alternatives. And there are some rules for comparing alternatives with each other and selecting the preferred alternative. The first rule says that when the revenues and all other economic benefits are present, okay, you can find it. There are such benefits because we will see some projects for which there are no benefits, but there is only the cost. But you have to do that project for some reason. But in some projects, you also have benefits. You can earn revenue. Okay, if these revenues and other economic benefits are present and they differ among the alternatives. It's not the same for all alternatives because in some projects the revenue is fixed. Whatever project you do, the revenue is, let's say, 10,000 riyal. Then it's the same, you don't need to consider. But if they are different from each other, then in order to select the best alternative, you need to concentrate on the profitability. And you will select the alternative that maximizes the profitability, revenue minus cost. Okay, so this is rule 1. Rule 2 states that in some cases, as I told you, the revenues are not present. There are no economic benefits, or these are constant among all alternatives. It's the same for all alternatives. In this case, in order to select the preferred alternative, we will consider only the cost. No need to consider the benefit. So some governmental projects are of this type because in governmental projects, usually it is not for making profit. It is for satisfying the citizens. So we select the alternative that minimizes the total cost. Okay, so these are the two rules. Two rules for selecting the preferred alternative. So we can do several examples. In your book, there are several examples for these present economic studies that implements this rule 1 and rule 2. One example is example 2.8. It is about choosing the most economic material for a part. In this kind of problems for material selection, in many cases, there may be, what does it mean first of all? What does material selection mean? In order to produce a product, for example, you may use alternative materials. And these materials may have different costs. So the decision is to select the minimum cost. But the thing is, usually, when you change the material, this change of material will also affect the design. So in order to satisfy the strength requirements, conductivity requirements, different type of requirements, you need to change the design. Also, a change in the material may require a different type of processing. It may require casting or metal cutting, turning, depending on the material. Your cutting tool can be different. And also it may affect the shipping cost. So it is not just the cost of material, but all these costs must also be included in the analysis. Another example, example number 2.9 in your book, is related to selecting the one of the alternative machines. So you may have different machines with different production rates, different capacities in terms of available hours, and different defect rates. You need to select the best machine, best alternative to accomplish or to produce a product. And again, by doing this present economic analysis, we determine the preferred machine to process that job. So you need to consider all these factors related to production rate, available hours, and defect rates. Another example is example 2.10, in which the speed of the machine is optimized. So usually machines can be operated at different speeds. But when you adjust the speed, when you increase the speed, your production rate is increased. You can produce more products in a given time. Okay, production rate means that how many products you are producing in a given time. Okay, so, but on the other hand, when you increase the speed, then because of the failures, the breakdowns, the frequency of the breakdowns increases. And also there are cutting tools. For example, in CNC machines, there are cutting tools. And when you increase the speed of the machine, these cutting tools, the life of the cutting tools decreases, and you need to change them more frequently. And the thing is, these cutting tools are very expensive usually. It means that your tooling cost increases. So your production rate increases, but at the same time, the repair time, the breakdown frequency, and tooling costs are also increasing. So you need to consider all of these to select the preferred operating speed. So we will not go over these examples here, but please read these examples by yourself. They are very clear. They are very easy to understand. Please read all these examples and try to appreciate these present economic studies. Another important present economic studies analysis is make versus purchase, or sometimes we call it outsourcing studies. Example 2.11 in your book is one of these kind of analysis. Please read that one as well. So in make versus purchase studies, what we do? As a manufacturing company, let's assume that you have a manufacturing facility and you can produce an item by yourself. But also there are some other producers of the same item. We call them as suppliers. These suppliers also produce the same item. So you may decide, instead of producing this item by yourself, you can go and buy this item from the suppliers, maybe at a lower price. Okay, so maybe instead of producing this item by yourself, you buy it from someone else, and you concentrate on producing something else, something more valuable for you. But of course, it depends on the cost, economical benefits. So you may choose, as a company, you may choose to produce this item in your own plant rather than purchasing it from the supplier, if the direct, indirect, and overhead costs are incurred regardless of whether the item is purchased from an outside supplier or not. So what does it mean? You already have your plant, you already have your labor, you already, this facility, for this facility you are paying the insurance, taxes, and etc., everything. So when you purchase this item from the supplier, if you still continue to make these payments, and if you will not utilize this manufacturing facility to produce something else, then in this case, you may want to produce it by yourself instead of purchasing it. But otherwise, if you will not pay for these when you purchase from a supplier, when you outsource this item, then you can go and outsource it. Or sometimes the incremental cost of producing the item is less than the supplier's price. And in this case, again, you may choose to produce the item in your own plant. These short-run costs of this study for make versus purchase decisions are the incremental costs incurred, the incremental costs For example, the material cost. Okay, you need to pay for the raw material of the products. So this is an incremental cost. And the opportunity costs of the resources. So what are your resources? Your labor, your workers, your machines. So if you can utilize them for producing something else and you can get more profit from that something else, this is the opportunity cost. So by producing the item in your own facility, you will not be able to allocate this to another product. But if you go and buy this item from a supplier, you can allocate these resources for another part or product, and this is the opportunity cost of producing in-house or in your own plant. So as I told you, these opportunity costs may become significant when you can allocate your resources for something else. You can manufacture other items. And in the long run, so these are short run. Short run means in a few days, in a few weeks, or in a few months. So we can call these as the short run. But in the long run, when we consider several years, so we may consider some capital investments on some additional manufacturing plant or capacity, so that by doing this additional capacity increases by these capital investments, you can increase your capacity, you can buy new machines, you can hire new workers, and you can produce in-house in your own plant at a cheaper price. So in the long run, these decisions should also be considered. So let's consider this example. This is a make versus purchase example. Assume that there is a company which is purchasing a part and it's now considering manufacturing the part in-house. Okay, this company is not operating at full capacity. It means that there is capacity that we can allocate to this product, and no other use for the excess capacity is contemplated. So if we don't use this capacity for this item, then the machines, the equipment, the labor will be idle. We will not use it for something else. So why we make this statement? Because we want to say that the opportunity cost is zero. You should not consider the opportunity cost. The unit costs of the items are given below. So the costs are given here. The direct material cost, if you manufacture per unit, you need to pay $1.5. Of course, if you purchase the item, you will not pay anything. You will just pay the final $7.5 for the item itself. But if you decide to manufacture, so these are the two alternatives, right? If you decide to manufacture it by yourself, direct material is $1.5. Direct labor, the operators working in the production of this item, okay, this is the cost, $1.35. The variable overhead cost, what does it mean? This $0.9 is the overhead cost. It is all relevant costs other than the direct material and direct labor, but it is changing with the number of units. So for example, the energy that you use on the machines, okay, to produce these items, it is not a direct material, it is not a direct labor cost, it's an overhead cost, but as you produce more and more, the energy cost also increases, so it's a variable cost. And also there are some fixed overhead costs, for example, the insurance cost, the tax cost, the salary of the administrative staff, and etc. These are included in the fixed overhead cost, and this does not change with the number of units. And when we add up all these, the total unit cost is $8. Okay, so if you purchase it 7.5, but if you manufacture it by yourself, it's $8. Now the question is this. By looking at this table, do you prefer to produce the part in-house or purchase it? Please answer this question by yourself. And most probably you are saying that we need to purchase this item because it is cheaper. But this answer is wrong. Now take a minute, stop the video, take a minute, and why is it wrong? Think about this. Why is it wrong? Okay, so concentrate on this one. This company is not operating at full capacity and no other use for the excess capacity is contemplated. So if you are not producing this, the items, the equipment, the labor will be idle. Okay, so think about this. So is this cost really the cost, total unit cost of producing? Or should you concentrate on something else when considering this decision, $7.5 or not? Take a minute to think about this, please. Let's analyze this problem in detail more carefully. Okay, in this problem, we assume that utilizing the excess capacity has no opportunity cost. Okay, we will not produce anything else. And this product will not change the fixed overhead for the plant. So the salaries of the administrative staff, the insurance, the taxes, we will pay it. Even we purchase the item or we produce it in our facility, we will pay this amount. So when we consider this, actually, the unit price for purchasing, is it really 7.5? Because this overhead cost, even if we purchase it, we will pay it. So the total cost of this production will be 11.25. Okay. Sorry, it will be 11.75. And now when you compare these two with each other, you see that purchasing, actually, when you purchase it, you are paying 11.75, but when you produce in-house, you will be paying $8. And the difference between them is 3.75. Or you can look in this way. So you can look item by item the difference. If you produce it, you will pay $1.5, right? Then the difference is 1.5. For purchase, it is 0, but when you produce, you will pay 1.5. If you produce again, you will pay 1.35 for labor, but nothing for purchasing. So the difference is 1.35. Similarly, let me clear this. For overhead variable cost, when you produce, you will pay 0.9, but nothing for purchase. It's 0.9. But for the fixed overhead cost, actually, for purchasing, you will pay this amount as well. So the difference is 0. And the incremental cost is 3.75. Okay. So currently we are purchasing. If we decide to produce by ourselves, the cost, additional cost, or the cost for us will be 3.75. And when we compare this with each other, we see that the incremental cost is less than purchasing cost. So it means that we need to, or it is better to manufacture this item in-house instead of purchasing it. So as you can see, you need to be careful in doing these economic analysis. Okay, you need to set your assumptions correctly, and you need to look at the difference between the alternatives and make your decision according to this. So if I ask you, what happens if fixed overhead also changes as a result of producing the product in-house. So currently, while purchasing, the fixed overhead cost is 4.25. If you decide to manufacture it in-house, if it needs to change, then from 4.25, maybe you add an additional part for manufacturing. So what will be your decision? And basically your decision should be like this. If this addition is less than the difference, 3.75, then you will select manufacturing. This is the best alternative for you. But if this addition on the fixed overhead charge is greater than 3.75, then you will select or you will continue purchasing this item. You will not manufacture the item in-house. So as a summary, in this part, we considered cost, volume, break-even point relationships. We concentrated or we solved examples for profit maximization. We considered cost-driven design optimization problems, and we did several present economical studies by ignoring the time value of money. We did make versus purchase analysis or studies. And this is the end of this chapter. In our next lecture, we will start considering our next chapter.